my friends, I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome! Today we're answering another RPGaDay topic. This is the 17th day of RPGaDay. RPGaDay is something very different. We'll talk about that in a future video. But today's topic is a good uplifting one. I think this one is a great topic that everybody should look out and get some ideas from. This one is, what is the funniest game you've played? Which is a great topic, because funny games don't... We often hear funny things, but they're unintentionally funny. Games that are themselves funny are a treasure, because you can easily get sucked into very serious games, and there are a lot. You could play something grim and horror-filled, like Call of Cthulhu, or Zweihander, or Lamentations of the Flame Princess. You can absolutely spend your entire time doing this heroic epic where everything is so important and impactful and meaningful, and just forget to laugh now and again, except for those incidental moments that are funny. Sometimes it's great just to get a game that you know on its face is ludicrous and will lead to hilarious moments. So I'm going to, of course, not answer this by giving one. I'm going to give a couple. But realistically, I used to really not do much for comedy. I knew they existed. Probably the first purely funny game I've ever heard of was Toon, made by Steve Jackson Games. It's a game about playing in a cartoon. So it's supposed to be whimsical. Rather rules light. It looks fine. I've never run Toon. I only ever read the book. And it was cool. I made a character for it, of course. I made Hoppy Days. Hoppy Days is a kangaroo with a pair of boxing gloves with the ability to pull anything out of his pouch. He would have been a great Toon character. Just never ended up playing it, unfortunately. But I've now since kind of seen how important it is to laugh together. And if you have a group that can laugh together, not laugh at each other, that's completely different and not as good of an experience. But laughing together, sharing in misfortunes with a laugh and a pat on the back because you know it's coming your way next. It's great. It changes the dynamic of the group. So I have 3 games to which I've laughed harder than I've ever laughed at any other game, with possibly one exception, and I'll give that as the asterisk. That one would be Star Wars. And you can take your pick. But Star Wars, even back in the day, with West End's D6 Star Wars system, Star Wars the role-playing game, they had a joke character or two. Things that just did not seem to have a place in a galactic war. I mean, you had Gamorrean pacifists. Yes, that was a template you could actually select from one of the books. The Gamorrean pacifist. And the Gamorreans, big, tough, pig-like creatures from Jabba's palace with big axes, remember? Yeah, you could play a pacifist. Didn't believe in fighting. Kind of outcast of their race because they're usually pretty thuggish. Yeah, that's what will help in a galactic war, and everybody else is playing somebody who can shoot or something. But the one that I played that absolutely highlighted how ludicrous it could get was another core race from even the very first book that game system came up with, the Chaotic Jedi. The Chaotic Jedi, that's Quixotic. Chaotic as in Don Quixote. You are delusional. You do not see reality the way that other people see reality. You believe you are a Jedi. And you're, of course, hallucinating it. You've never been a Jedi. You've never had the training. You do, however, have a small connection to the Force. You can sense things, but you can't control it. But yet you imagine that you are a Jedi. And you deal with the world how you think a Jedi should deal with the world. Completely whimsical. This character should get killed very quickly. The moment they go running at something that they see as being bad, like a stormtrooper, with whatever they think is a lightsaber, should be done. Can't actually do the Force, so you're just gonna get shot. Yeah. That's why you have the other people around you, I guess. But I played one. His name was Lachem Chobash. And he was a lunatic running around in a bathrobe with a flashlight. Yeah, that's as far as he ever got, too. And while that campaign was going on, he was amusing. He did have a fun perspective, and I would just make up pearls of Jedi wisdom off the top of my head. And at one point, he decided that clothing was an impediment to the Force. So the next time the group went up into the cockpit of the ship we were in, there's my character buck naked, communing with the Force. And the Gamorrean pacifist in the group, this was not a serious group, decided this made sense. So he took off his clothes and the rest of the crew hid in terror. But yeah. The funny part about that was we had a very large group split into two different games that were running simultaneously, and occasionally we'd have crossovers. And at one point, our little group of misfits took on a brash pilot who wanted to be a Jedi and had the Force capabilities and a little training, and a Wookiee, his Wookiee companion. And at one point, the pilot was talking up their exploits. Prior to this, they had been in a ship that contained several exotic, basically monster alien races. And he was really talking up his Wookiee friend who had unarmed combat. I thought, no, he had a weapon. But hand-to-hand combat with what was eventually a baby Sarlacc. Not as massive as the one on Tatooine, but still nasty. And he killed it with getting right up and personal. Using a force point, of course, doing ridiculous damage. It didn't make it soak, so he ended up killing it. And he was talking it up like his friend is like the greatest warrior in the galaxy. And my character, who introduced himself as Jedi Master Lachem Chobash, yes, he's a master, said, "The ability to destroy a baby Sarlacc is insignificant next to the power of the Force." Deadpan. And it just resonated. I pulled off the famed Darth Vader quote. Well, similar to the quote. And everybody lost it. That moment, that time, everybody lost it. The other group was playing, it was a large basement. They were playing the other table. Wanted to find out why we were laughing so hard. We told them, gasping it out, and they all started laughing because they were either from our group, and I could imagine Lachem saying that, or they thought it was equally funny. So we all laughed for like 10 minutes. It just completely wrecked a good 15 minutes of game time while we composed ourselves. That was fun, but not inherently funny. So it is definitely worth looking into the games. And I have 3 of them. So the very first one is Ghostbusters. We play the 1986 version, the original Ghostbusters. Although I do have access to International. International looks a little bit more like a professional role-playing game. You can see that it has evolved. But Ghostbusters on its face is just a ludicrous premise. You're following in the footsteps of the Ghostbuster movies, which were comedies, which were funny. These characters are caricatures, mostly, although said in a believable way. The ghosts and the trappings and stuff, really incidental. The special effects and everything were just good enough to do what they needed to do, the heavy lifting. And don't think too hard about how and why all of this works, and it just works. You just turn your brain off and enjoy it as good comic fun. Well, when you're playing a role-playing game, those details still don't have to matter. As a game master, you still hand-wave all that stuff. It's about the characters and what the characters do, more so than how well they aim their proton streams to catch a ghost. As a matter of fact, the last time I ran it, there were no ghosts to catch. They had to deal with a Were St. Bernard. Actually, a couple of them. But still, as experts in supernatural, they got to deal with that fun stuff, and it was fun. But it is, on its face, silly. The players are very loosely defined. They can still feel like they can do just about anything, although they'll still hedge to what they're good at, but still, that's just a role-playing game, really. And Yeah, it's playing with the ludicrous premise of Ghostbusters, and it should be a laugh a minute. It should be hilarious. No character is going to die in it. It's a comedy, so dare to do cool things and say the cool things. That's usually far more important. And so that's the first one. I'm also going to throw another honorable mention in because there was a game we laughed incredibly hard at. It was the Princess Bride role-playing game, which basically uses the Fudge Fate system. That one was a lot of fun too, but that was as much dramatic and heroic as it was funny, but it just, on its face, it was still funny. We had a lot of fun with it. It's a romantic comedy game, so yeah, there should be funny moments in it. But you could play it really po-faced and straight, and so, okay, whatever. Anyhow, moving on. Number 2, Paranoia. You need to have the right players to play Paranoia. I'm convinced of this. Some players do not get it. They will look at it as a tactical exercise. They will look at it as a trying to win, because there's definitely winners and losers. If your character is alive and the other characters are smoking piles of ash, you win. Kind of how it goes. But when you get a good group that buys into the world and doesn't look at it as an exercise in killing off the other player characters, it can be a lot of fun. Especially if they take differing levels of seriousness of their characters. If they play everything as completely straight up, straight-laced, they are troubleshooters loyal to the computer, and somebody else is a slacker who rolls their eyes at them a lot, that's hilarious tension between them, but it's going to be funny. It's going to have a payoff. Either the slacker is going to get a chuckle out of it when the other person dies, or the other person is going to be even more convinced of the righteousness of their cause. If the slacker dies, it's gonna, and they should die. You should go through a character session at least. And it's lighthearted. You have six clones, so if you lose a character, it's not a big deal. But some people really take stuff personally, and those are not the people who should be playing Paranoia. But if you can relax and just enjoy the insanity of the world and enjoy how expendable your character is, and spend those lives in just being funny and having a good time with it, Paranoia can be a great game. But there's a lot of caveats that stop it from being the #1 game in my list, just because it is that nuts. So again, I have a couple other comedy games, but I haven't played them, so I can't tell you if Die Laughing is all that funny. You play in a teen slasher flick, and if your character dies, you get to join the director and hose the remaining players. That's the novelty of it, and it should be lighthearted and fun. I haven't played it yet, but that's on my radar of funny games to play. I think that professional wrestling games are inherently funny. So games like Power Slams and Pile Drivers, or what's the other one? Worldwide Professional Wrestling, I think, is one that I've got. It's probably the most elaborate. Those would probably have a lot of inherent comedy as well. The WWF adventure game is not that funny. It gives you opportunity for some drama, possibly, and some funny things might happen, but it is such a simulation game that it's not that funny. Only for people who really love pro wrestling. But the #1 top game that I have played that is so good for funny is a free game that you can download called Anime Campaign. It was created by a guy named Jello Apocalypse. That is his YouTube or his podcasting handle, YouTube handle, what have you. And he and some friends were streaming role-playing games, and they came up with this, and it is very rules light. It is a superhero game, if you can believe that, where everybody has a superpower based on one word randomly selected from the dictionary. And there's a great word generator that comes with it. And the storyteller, game master, comes up with a selection of superpowers based on that word, which you can select a few of. And there should be one that's an attack, and maybe a strong attack, and then something else. But when I ran the game, And you're in an anime world, by the way. Guns don't do much damage. They practically do nothing. Your powers are much more useful and powerful. If you walk down the street, you'll probably see at least one superpower battle, because that's what people with these epithets, these powers do, is fight each other, because anime. And it was, we played it, and oh gosh, we laughed so hard. I can't remember laughing harder at a game. I don't think I ever have. Honestly, I think it was the funniest game we ever played. Granted, I got a great group. They were willing to buy into the madness. And you need that. You need people to not take things seriously. That's inherent in a comedy game, I believe. And they didn't. And we just, from day one, from the moment to start, I mean, okay. I told everybody to make characters that you might find hanging out in a mall, because the campaign was going to take place in the mall. So I had the local high school jock, whose abilities were based on the word ball. So he could make all kinds of balls, including cannonballs. That was his best attack. He could make a cannon and shoot somebody. He loved doing that. We had a mall Santa Claus in July, trying to get things right for the season. His word was premature, which came up with all kinds of terrible things. But he actually had the ability to interrupt other people's actions by prematurely doing something which would spoil it. So he enjoyed that ability too. He also had a candy cane. That was his weapon, a big plastic candy cane. And he could throw snowballs too. He loved that. We had a character who was a goth, hung out around, you know, sneering at people at Hot Topic and stuff. Hers was copy. And one of her abilities was copycat. So she could take the cats that were always on her stockings and have them appear as identical cats in a flood that could absolutely maul somebody. She could also copy somebody else's ability, too, that they had just used. So she actually was quite a wild card in the group. We also had, God, the hardest one for me to make was a guy who was playing as a straight-up redneck named Bubba, whose ability was based around the word commemorate. Oh my gosh. That was hard to do. But he chose that word out of 3. And some of those other ones would have been really good, but he wanted commemorate. So one of them was he's able to fire off fireworks like the 4th of July, which is a commemoration. And so it was such a good game, though. The players were in the position that the premise for that game that I wrote up was that there was a game called Monster Zookeeper Collection Battle. Yes, it's like Pokemon. Yes, I was spoofing it. I don't care. And the players were trying to not collect the cards. This was all going around in the background. Their characters weren't slaves to the cards. But some dastardly person was creating counterfeit cards. And the local, they were in, I think, Townsville. The Townsville Police Department Collectible Card Division asked them to look into it. They were just random people. But because they were in this big knockdown, drag-out fight against Cardbeard and his pirate gang, it's so funny. After they beat Cardbeard and Posse using their powers in a food court in the mall, they were asked by the Townsville Police Department Collectible Card Division to look into the counterfeiting, which they agreed to. And it just got bad from there. It just kept going and going. Any trope I felt like dipping into, I was possible. Using any kind of superpower was possible, but I had fun with a random word generator and kept making these inscribed people who would fight them, and it was these glorious fights. At one point they came on two teens who were fighting, 2 girls who hated each other's guts, and they had powers going off aplenty. It was great. But it was funny. It was so hilarious because anything you do, you roll a 20-sided die for. On a 1, you fail critically and horribly. On a natural 20, you do fantastically. There's no modifiers to this die, by the way. Everybody has the same chance of success and failure. If you roll a 16 to a 19, you succeed with a bonus. You do great. You succeed on a let's see. You outright just fail on a 2, 3, or 4. 5, 6, or 7, or 8. You succeed, but there's something that happens, something not so good. It creates a hindrance. But you still succeed. So if you're going to attack somebody, you have better than 75% chance of hitting on anything you try to do, just like they have to hit you. And between the succeed with a hindrance and critical success, I think it's 10 to 15 is just a success. And using that very, very simple mechanic, it was so much fun. Highly recommend it. It was a great game. We had a couple of sessions, and I really kind of do look forward to going back and trying that again, because it was really, really good. I printed off the document off online, and you can look it up too. Anime Campaign with an exclamation mark at the end. Free, solid, not deep. No. This is not something you want to play long campaigns of, probably. But for a absolute blast, that does require a bit of preparation. I will say this. You do have to prepare and create the characters in advance, and that Game Master has to do most of the heavy lifting. You give the players perhaps a choice of a couple of different words that you select randomly, but then you have to come up with superpowers for them to choose from. So that is important to note that it does require a little prep, but boy, it was such a payoff. It was so good. So that's my pick. That's my suggestions for the funniest games that I own and have played. There's tons out there, though. There's so many. I can't believe that My Little Pony is going to be a very serious game. And I know that the Tales of Equestria was not, again, a really grim game. It was about fun and friendship, as it should be. There have been a lot of fun games, and there have been a lot of joke games out there, too. Let's face it, Diana Warrior Princess was never going to be a serious game, but there it is. But still, I do recommend taking a look at some of those, especially if you're used to very serious games. A change of pace can lighten the mood so well. That's my offerings for you for today. I am the Dungeon Tutor. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope if you enjoyed this, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It means so much to me. I do enjoy the feeling that you really, really care, and that's how you can show it. And also notify yourself so that you'll see when I do future videos. And if you know somebody who needs a laugh in their gaming experience, feel free to share. There's so many good games out there, but these are a couple that I've illustrated for you, and hopefully they can find some purchase. But I do hope that you come back for more videos. I've got more yet to make, and we'll hopefully see you along the way. And between then and now, I hope that you, yes you, get a chance to roll some dice, play some games, have some fun, and stay safe out there, my friends. Until then, next time, farewell.